Welcome, everybody, to your weekly FraxCheck, your Frax vibe check. I'm your host, Capital K, and I'm back for FraxCheck number 45. Quick shout out and thank you to my co host, DeFi Dave, and our producer extraordinaire, Sam, for filling in for me last week. I appreciate it, boys. But, guys, this week we are back and we are better than ever. Things are green, as the name suggests on the last pod. It was gangrene. And this week, I'm going to say the party continues. So this week's called The Party Continues, and we'll start right away into our very first flagship product, the Frax stablecoin. And as the party continues, it continued to be flat for the from last week to this week, or probably for the last, I want to say, since May, as you can kind of pretty much see right there. Pretty much since May, it's been flat at the 1 billion mark. Next, we have our peg check, and Next, we have our collateralization percent and decentralization percent. It's at 94.5%, again, unchanged for the week from last. And our decentralization percent is at 22.3%, up small from last week. And next, we have our peg check, of course, and that is a high of 1.001 to a low of 0.999. Very strong peg check, but obviously we have to go into the markets and see what that's like. So we went to Curve and swapped 100 million frax for USDC to receive an exchange rate of 0.9982. Peg check strong. Moving on, we have our Frax BP, aka the liquidity as a service product. And you see here, our TVL is up 619 million, pretty much hovering around this new range ever since we cleared that 500 million mark about like a month ago. So we're now at 619 million, down 2% from last week. However, on the volume front, we actually processed 146 million in volume for the Frax BP pool, which is quite outstanding for this month so far of June. That is about 24% utilization rate. That is a phenomenal utilization rate. In the past, it was like under 10% for the whole month. So this is definitely on the up and up. Moving on, we have our comparison side by side across the different pools. We have the Frax BP at 619 million, the 3 pool at 329 million, the Frax 3 CRV is 183 million, and Frax PP, that is the USDP and Frax base pool, that is 112 million in TVL. So across the board, Frax has over 900 million compared to the Curve's native 3 pool of 330 million. Very much in the new regime now. But before we continue further with Frax, I want to take a time machine back to Sam Kazemian's first product, which is a project, which is IQ, aka BrainDAO. And IQ is effectively the encyclopedia for crypto. And what I want to talk about specifically is the staking of IQ, which you could opt for from the 1 week all the way to the 4-year lock, similar to how Frax or Curve has their locking VE system. Here, your voting power is 4x if you lock it up for 4 years, and it decays linearly, just like Curve and FXS and VEFXS. So why would you want to stake your IQ? Well, I have 112 reasons to give you. There is currently paying at 112% APR for IQ. And when you stake IQ, you receive high IQ. So obviously don't be low IQ and go join the 183 high IQ holders. And I want to point out there are 1,812 Ethereum holders of IQ on Ethereum. Yet there are only 183 of them in staking in the high IQ. So we definitely need to get that number up. And if you're not at least staking your high IQ, I hope you are LPing your IQ in the Frax liquidity Frax swap pool with IQ and Frax. And another key reason, though, on why you want to do this is you kind of want to manage this $15.4 million worth of treasury for the BrainDAO treasury. That has solid assets, almost 35% of it is in FrxETH, another 12% in Convex, and $1 million just in FraxLend alone. So clearly there are a lot of value in this IQ treasury, and it should definitely be looked after for. But anyways, let's get back to our regular programming. This is our FrxETH, our second, or rather our third stablecoin, the FrxETH stablecoin, which is obviously pegged towards ETH. And here we have 232,004 FrxETH supply. That is a increase of 1.8% from last week. As you can see, we had a pretty large dip about maybe a month ago, give or take. And then now we're kind of like reclaiming our all-time high. So where are all of these FrxETH hanging out? Well, 2/3 of them are hanging out in the FrxETH native staking contract to earn that sweet native yield. A quarter of them is hanging out in the Curve LP, earning some nice CVX, CRV, and FXS rewards. And else, the 9% kind of floating around in the ether, which is also known as the monetary premium, where people are just simply holding FrxETH to hold FrxETH as outside of the native flywheel per se. And recall that FrxETH is, like I said, a stablecoin. So we got to check the peg. And here we have a peg of 0.9989. That is on the dashboard. But like I always, we don't trust the dashboard alone. So we come in here and we swap 3,500 FrxETH for ETH and received an exchange rate of 0.9983. I need to quickly update that. But that is a fairly tight exchange rate. Like I've always said, I want the exchange rate to be above any 0.997. I just feel like paying 30 bips to swap stable assets are a pretty high ask, since you're pretty much just swapping unstable, volatile assets with each other. And that's just not what this is. Moving on, we have our market share on the LSD landscape. And here, Frax is pretty much hanging tight at 2.33% for the last, I would say almost the whole month. We pretty much remain flat at this rate. And you see here that Rocket Pool and Lido had a wonderful 30-day change. They're each up almost 10% plus. Lido's up 9.5%. Rocket Pool is up 12.7%. And we see here that Coinbase wrapped ETH is declining by 3% over the last 30 days. So everybody's coming up. We're still hanging on there. We're still hanging on to our fourth place, but we would reclaim it. We're aiming for the throne. That's what we're doing, guys. We're aiming for the throne. So hang in there. We're going to keep that number going up. But one place that we are already on top of, and that is the yield department. Currently, right now, we're earning 5.11% in APY, and our TVL is 432 million. Again, got to correct the slides there. A little bit rusty back from the break, but nonetheless, the stats here is that we are on the top at 5.11% APY on a 432 million TVL. Very nice, very juicy. Now to talk about the stablecoin, I like to call it the middle child stablecoin, that is FPI. We have an FPI supply of 82.6 million, which is pretty much unchanged, though the annual inflation index did go down from 5 to 4.1% this week. So that was quite notable. And currently, right now, the FPI peg is actually 12 basis points above what is needed to maintain that inflation peg. The treasury value, though, is now sitting at 89.4 million, of which 46% of it is deployed into the convex FPI Frax pool to provide liquidity. And then the excess equity, that is all the assets, aka the treasury, minus the outstanding FPI that would have to be paid out. We have a excess asset, aka equity, of 4.1 million. So very nice there. And lastly, we're going to move on to our FraxLend product. You see here, we were on our way, trucking along very well. As you can see, you can see in the March of this year, is pretty much when we had that pretty big hit on the Circle fiasco. And because of that, we've been trying to climb back. And recently, we actually blew right through that around late May. But with the with the market pullback earlier this month in June, you saw our collateral value got whacked down, and obviously the borrowed value got whacked down as well. Currently, right now, there are 220 million in TVL, and there is about 57.5 million being borrowed. Out of that, 60 that represents a 66% utilization rate. So there's about like I think 80 something million that is being lent, that's being available to borrow, and out of that, 57 million of it is being borrowed. Ergo, 66%, which is down 4% from last week. Not very great here, but you'll see that the pairs that are being offered here is extremely well printing, for lack of a better word. You see the CRV Frax pool is still paying out that wonderful 7% for all Frax being supplied, though the cost to borrow is quite large there at almost 12%. And you see also for FXS, everybody's also leveraging, and it's at 9% to supply and 15% to borrow with the FXS Frax pair. Now, note that there is a FrxETH Frax pair in the V2 that needs to be migrated to the V3. So those APY would not hold, and I would recommend those who are currently paying that 48% borrow to please move and pay back your debt so you can borrow at a nice 3% instead. All right, that is all for the public announcement on FraxLend. Moving on to what I like to call the DEX that nobody knows of, and that is FraxSwap, which currently has 69.5 million in TVL, which is a 70 bips bump from last week. And for the month of June so far, we've processed $46.9 million in volume. That is 67.5% of the TVL. That's pretty sweet. I don't think there are other DEXs out there that have facilitated that much of liquidity for their LPers. But what are the top pairs? You see here, the top pair is FXS Frax. Obviously, with the news of the buyback and everything of that nature, there are a ton of activity in the FXS Frax pair. Though, if you just go back maybe 3 weeks ago, a month ago, the average 7-day volume for this FXS Frax pair was in the 15 million. So nonetheless, we are still actually below where we were previously. But regardless, printing very nicely there. The second mostly traded pair is the IQ Frax pair, which clocked in over 1 million for this 7-day period. Again, if you're not staking your IQ, please be sure to LP it so you're earning some nice yield from putting that capital to work. Lastly, in our section of profitability, I'm going to go over our AMOs. So first off, in aggregate, we have a total AMO value of 844 million. And out of that, that is comprised of the Curve AMO, which is 549 million, the Liquidity AMO, which is 67 million, the Lending AMO, 105 million, and the Investor AMO, 123 million. And all these AMOs are generating that sweet revenue. And I'm going to dive into that next here for you guys. First, for June profit of so far, we are down 210K. But that's not so bad. That's not so bad, guys. I'll show you why, because we made a lot of revenue elsewhere. But let's quickly walk through what revenue looks like for the month of June so far. It is about 490K in CRV, 50K in CVX, and 40K in FXS. Gives us a total revenue of 580K. On the expenses, we paid about 790K in bribes for the month of June so far. Ergo, the net loss right now is 210K. Moving on, we have our AMO FraxLend AMO. And we have not increased any new Frax into this AMO for the week so far. And out of the Frax that we did minted, which is the 85 million, we have lent out about 59 million of that Frax. That 59 million is being put to work. And how much work? Well, for June, we pulled in 92.2K in pure profit here, guys. That's an average of 23,000 a week. That's pretty freaking solid if we're able to pull that per week, right? And the not only that, the FraxLend AMO also makes money from, as unfortunate as it is, liquidations. And so far for June revenue, we have almost 250K in liquidations. So that means a lot of you folks out there are being quite aggressive in the books these past 2 weeks or so. And a lot of people got hurt. So stay safe out there. We don't like to see this revenue, but we'll definitely take it. That is 250K in revenue for the month of June for all liquidations so far. And then on our FPI, which is the revenue before, the revenue after we had to pay down the peg increase, right? That's an expense that we must maintain to keep on beating inflation. So that comes out to be about $27,500 so far for the month of June. Okay, I know the math here from 73K to 64K is only 8, but then there are unclaimed rewards of about almost 19K, 18K or so. So that's why we have a June number of 27, which would obviously be swept and claimed. Now, in aggregate, let's put all of this together. We have our convex AMO down 210K or 205K in this case. It was rounded in the earlier slides. And our FraxLend generating 92K. Our FraxLend liquidation generated 250K. And our FrxETH put in 200K. And our FPI put in 27K. For the month of June, so far on the 27th of June, we have $365,000 in profit. That is very sweet. That's sweet, sweet profit, guys. And that is all I have for you this week. And thank you so much for tuning in to this week's FraxCheck number 45. Your boy is back, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.